Miller of ESPN, kind enough to give us a few minutes on this Friday. Matt, what's going on, man? How are you?
Oh, well, guys. Appreciate you having me on again.
Absolutely. Hey, I think now that Treylon Burks is seen as a top 4 receiver in the NFL by Cam Ward, we can just go ahead and start putting the jerseys on pre-order before next Thursday night in Green Bay. What do you like about the Cam Ward fit with Brian Callahan and his future here as the number 1 overall pick in Tennessee?
Yeah, well, I guess I was also wrong about Treylon Burks. He's the top 4 receiver in the NFL, so my bad on that one. Sorry, I steered you wrong on that grade that I had on him. I would say with Cam Ward, you're getting a playmaker, which is huge. You know, someone who can create on his own with the arm angles, with the mobility, someone who has really good field vision, really good arm strength. The way that he moves to find passing windows is pretty exciting. Like, I think that's what he does best. And then we saw this past year at Miami, when he had some weapons, he really took that next step. And you could go back to when he was at Washington State, some of the things that he and Kyle Williams did together. I mean, there was some really good moments, but he took that huge step this year in limiting turnovers, limiting some of the sacks that he was taking before. So I think you're also you're getting somebody that's more of a finished product than you might have expected, but the 5 years in college helped, and he's experienced and he's smart.
ESPN's Matt Miller, our guest this morning at NFL Draft Scout, where you follow him. Great stuff, as always, on Twitter. So, Matt, how can Brian Callahan set up Cam Ward to be successful? Is there a pathway to Cam having a Jaden Daniels-like rookie season, and what will it take schematically to get the most out of him in 2025?
Yeah, I wouldn't want to put those expectations on him just because Jaden was different. Like, Jaden as a runner, and I took heat for this last year. I said he was similar to Lamar Jackson as a runner.
Sure.
So you're not going to get that. I think the key here, guys, is, and I hope this is something the Titans attack with pick 35, is they need more weapons. Because, obviously Calvin Ridley and Treylon Burks are now top 5 receivers in the NFL. But realistically speaking, you need more help. And I think that's the key here. Let's see what this reshuffled offensive line looks like. So as far as scheme-wise, I would want to, get him moving a little bit. I would want some moving pockets. I would want some play action, some RPO, take advantage of what the threat that his legs could be. You've got 2 speedy backs and Spears and Pollard who can be really helpful to that. So I would want to keep defenses guessing as much as possible. Utilize the middle of the field. Ridley is an elite route runner. Get him on some breaking routes, things like that. But I would love to see this team add another receiver somewhat early in this draft.
ESPN's Matt Miller is with us this morning discussing pre-draft opportunities for the Titans and everyone else, man. Speaking of the value and being able to help potentially Cam Ward being drafted here, what's a better value, though, in the second round? Because the Titans don't have that third, and that's a long way from pick 35 to pick 101. Would you say a better value is a wide receiver like a Luther Burden, or would you go second round D-tackle, D-end type of guy to help him defensively to get the ball back?
Yeah, so I would go wide receiver. That's a great question. And Luther Burden's my guy. He's my top receiver in this draft. And it's going to be a shame if he gets drafted at 35, but I'll be very happy for Titans fans if it does. I think the drop-off at wide receiver happens in round 3. I have 5 receivers in round 2, 5 receivers in round 3. I only have 2 in round 4 and only 2 in round 5. So there's a pretty significant drop-off. I think when you look at defensive tackle, defensive end, you're going to be able to find value in round 5. I have 6 defensive ends. I've got 3 defensive tackles. So you're going to be able to get some good value there. And I even think in round 4, round 4, I have 10 defensive tackles with a grade in round 4. So just the way the board sets up from the grade perspective, I would go receiver in 2. I'd go D tackle in 4. And then if you want to get an edge rusher, I would do that in round 5.
Man, but we've heard and seen a lot of speaking about I want to transition to the quarterbacks real quick. As far as the guys after Cam, I have to ask you specifically about one guy, Shedeur Sanders, man. Has Deion presence, name, notoriety affected him more than almost any other quarterback that can be drafted in, the late first to second round? Like, has his presence caused a lot? Right now, you got the jersey retirement conversation, and you say, well, it's another Deion Sanders situation. I know it doesn't affect him as a pro, but at least the perception of the prospect. How are you viewing him in the pre-draft with what you're looking for?
I don't think it's affected him negatively. And the teams that I've talked to, and I've talked to people with the Titans about it, they really enjoyed their time with Shedeur, whether that be at the East West Shrine or at the Combine. Like, the interviews went well. So I think you have to view it. You can view it 2 ways. There could be people who say, he's bringing his own show to our team. He's going to think he's bigger than our team. There's going to be people that can have that opinion. I'm more of the opinion of he knows how to operate in the spotlight because he's been in it for the last 4 years, certainly, but for a lot of his life, he's had to learn how to live in that spotlight. So I think there could be positives that come from it. I think, for some of the stuff with Shedeur, like the jersey retirement and his dad being famous, he didn't ask for those things. They're just a byproduct of his life that he's going to have to learn to navigate. I think we're honestly to the point where teams are starting to just evaluate him based on his potential and his traits and his play instead of, some of the mystique that comes around him and some of the attention that he had for the 2 years at Colorado. And that's why we're seeing the discrepancy in where he could be drafted. It's based more on, okay, here's a good college quarterback. He's not very big, not very strong, not very fast. Where do you rank a player like that? Well, realistically, it's late first round. That's where players like that almost always go.
Matt Miller of ESPN. You can check out his great work on ESPN. Also, he will be on the cast for their draft coverage coming up here next week. We're excited about that. Matt, when it comes to, I'm going to go back to the wide receiver conversation because obviously that's a hot topic here. You described maybe, Treylon Burks has not worked out. A lot of fans, they want to draw that connection to Cam Ward has played with Xavier Restrepo. Cam Ward has played with Kyle Williams at Washington State. Where do those guys land then with where you would put them and where you could grab them?
I love Kyle Williams.
Yeah.
So that would be fun just to get those two together. I look at Kyle, I think he goes third round, and it's probably going to be early third round.
Wow.
And some of that's going to depend on what happens to Luther Burden, what happens to the guys from Iowa State, Jaden Higgins and Jalen Noel. Where does Trey Harris from Ole Miss go? If those guys go earlier, Kyle's going to get pulled up a little bit. So I think round 3 is realistic. Xavier Restrepo, man, that's tough because it's one of my favorite players to watch. So the pad 40 time, like not being a super dynamic athlete, he's going to go round 5, round 6. He's going to be in that range. So if you're wanting to take a day 3 flyer on someone that you have some familiarity with, I think that's the way to go. Elijah Arroyo had his best year ever with Cam Ward at quarterback, playing tight end. He's going to go in the second round. Probably not a priority for the Titans in round 2 to get a tight end, but those are the guys that he's most familiar with. And then Jamie Martinez, a running back, is probably going to go in round 4 or round 5, and that's another spot. I don't know that we're seeing Tennessee spend a pick that early on a running back.
You know what's interesting here too, Matt? They've brought in, obviously, top 30 visits. They've had some running backs that they've brought in. And I think when you look at that running back room for the Titans right now, you're like, well, it looks complete. But they seem to be serious about that. Is there a complimentary back that they could go for, in rounds 4 and later that would work?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it would work because you have two guys who are kind of similar in Pollard and Spears. They're both under 200 pounds. So I look at this and say, all right, I want somebody that can get the tough yards, that can move the pile. Cam Scatterbo would be really interesting in round 5. And I know every time I say Cam Scatterbo round 5, people are like, what? Are you crazy? But no, really. I know he was great in the college football playoffs. I know he tore up the Longhorns, and he's a great story, and he's fun to watch. But he's limited athletically. There's not a lot of juice to his game. He's really a leaning runner. I bet he goes around 4 or round 5, so he could be someone that fits that role really well. I like Devin Neal from Kansas as well in that same range as somebody who can move the pile, can be physical, but also is a good receiver out of the backfield.
Matt Miller of ESPN with us at NFL Draft Scout, where you follow him on Twitter. Matt, as you look at what the Titans could do, like you mentioned on day 2, 3, I know you were a big fan of Chris Paul, the linebacker out of Ole Miss. Where is their value on day 3 in that position, and maybe even a coverage linebacker that's a little bit off the beaten path that is a role player the Titans you feel like could be interested in?
Yeah, Pooh Paul is my guy. He's going to probably go round 4, round 5. Here's the point. I love the day 3 linebacker class this year. And I said this on Twitter to someone the other day. I said, getting Demetrius Knight in the 4th or 5th round from South Carolina, who could be that coverage backer. I mean, he is so smooth and fluid, and he's so good in coverage. Barrett Carter from Clemson. Years ago, we're talking about Barrett Carter, the first-round pick. He's going to be a day 3 guy. And he's ideal for a weak side linebacker role. He's ideal in coverage. Toby King from Penn State's going to be a 4th or 5th round pick. Kane Medrano is going to be a 4th or 5th round pick. I'm very happy that I'm on the desk for day 3 of the draft because all these dang linebackers are going to get selected, and I'm going to be geeking out because I think they can all become NFL starters. And if you look at pulling depth charts in the NFL, there aren't many linebackers, starting linebackers who are drafted in the first round. It's a lot of guys who fell in the draft for one reason or another. Nick Bolton, Zach Bond, guys like that who slide in the draft a little bit and then end up becoming starters and really good players. So I really do think day 3 is the time to get your starting linebacker.
Matt, we are definitely familiar with what the NFL feels about Art Briles' coaching tree system quarterback. So we lived it a couple years ago with Hendon Hooker when he came out of Tennessee. With Jackson Dart at Ole Miss, what makes him different as a prospect to where maybe he shouldn't be typecast as one of those guys? And what do you like or don't like about him and now potentially a first-round pick at quarterback?
Yeah, I like him a lot, and I've been biased because I've seen him in person a couple of times. I think the difference is the traits and that he's young. So with Hendon, he was a little bit older of a prospect. He was also coming off an injury. I like Hendon, though. I think guys like that who you know how to take those deep shots, you know how to read the field, down the field. I think Jackson moves better than Hendon did. He's certainly more physical, at 225 pounds. And I think with where the league is at right now, the hard part with that offense with these quarterbacks is it's hard to throw deep in the NFL. Everybody's sitting back trying to take away the big play. You have to be able to throw a touch and timing on underneath routes. You have to be able to pick people apart. That's where Jackson, I think, struggles at times, is seeing it fast enough to make some of those throws. So that's going to be a big part of his development. But I think he's smart enough, and I think he's determined enough to be able to do that.
ESPN Matt Miller is joining us this morning. You can follow him on Twitter at NFL Draft Scout, just so you know. Matt, and with that, you've done this for years now, and I want to revisit a guy, if you don't mind, recently, 3 years ago, Will Levis, coming out of college. How did you view him versus what he's done currently in the NFL? Is this kind of the crash course of what he would turn into if not being successful, or is this a product of the system and coaching changes and everything else?
I think everyone's a product of both, honestly. Like, you're a product of your system to some degree. You're a product of your own abilities. I took a lot of heat when Will Levis came out. I was not the biggest fan. I had a second-round grade on him, and I had folks upset when I said that because they're like, no, he's going to go in the top 5. He's going to go in the top 10. And I just didn't see it. I did not think he should be rated that highly. And I don't want to take a victory lap and say, oh, my gosh, look how right I was about Will Levis. But I think he's played about to that level, where he's been good, not great. And obviously they're moving on after 2 years. And when you're moving on after 2 years of a guy who you have under rookie control at pick 33, that's a pretty cheap starting quarterback. So to move on, you got to say, like, okay, we know that he's not going to be the guy for us. And obviously, we're looking at the third general manager since he was drafted. So that affects things as well. But I still have hope that Levis can have his Sam Darnold or Geno Smith moment where he gets to a new spot and he's learned some lessons as a player and he can take those and apply them. I don't think, it's not time to kick him out of the NFL or anything, but that reckless style that he played with in college, he played with in the NFL, and from a downfield passing perspective, from a running perspective, I think he's just got to learn to give up on what's not there.
Matt Miller of ESPN joining us this morning. We're talking about the upcoming NFL draft. Let's go back to the quarterback conversation. It's always a conversation. But when it comes to reaching for some of these guys, we've mentioned Jackson Dart. We've mentioned Shedeur Sanders. What about these guys right now that I feel like are getting a lot of buzz, like a Tyler Shuck? Like, are you on that or are you off that train?
I'm hearing it, so I believe it, but I'm not. I'm not out here saying you should draft Tyler Shuck in the top 30. I don't think I'm not going to go there. But this happens every year, right? Yeah. Even the Willis year, or the Levis year, it was all this talk about Will Levis is going to go top, and before that it was Malik Willis, and before that it was Desmond Ridder. So it happens every year. I think we're all trying to make the Lamar Jackson year happen again, where someone trades back to 32 to get that 5th year on a quarterback. I don't think it's happened since then. But it's such a fun storyline, and it makes sense, well, you got to trade back in to get the 5th year option. No one has done it, so we'll see. I've heard it with Tyler Shuck, I've heard it with Jalen Miller, I've heard it with Jackson Dart. Before that, it was Quinn Ewers. Like, it's been every quarterback in this class, it feels like. So we'll see when we get to next Thursday. I think we have one first-round quarterback in Cam Ward. We have one late first-round quarterback in Shedeur Sanders. Then we got a lot of second-round players that might get overdrafted.
Matt, when you look at the former Vol James Pierce now and what the film shows, I know the off-field stuff is the off-field stuff with him, but what are the positives and negatives on tape of him as a prospect?
Yeah, the positives of the first step quickness is unreal, and it's how he is able to have so much success. And over the past 2 years, his closing speed to the quarterback is ridiculous. He's a legit, I thought on tape he was a 4.4 guy. He's so athletic in space. He can be used to stunt. He can loop. He can beat you up. as a spy. I mean, he's a classic 3-4 outside linebacker. And it's funny, if we were 1 year ago, I knew teams that had him as the top pass rusher in last year's draft had he been able to declare. He would have gone above Latu. He would have gone above Dallas Turner. But then he had a slow start this year, and you hear about the off-field stuff, you hear about the character stuff, and it's dropped his stock to where, I mean, he could go first round, but I don't think we should be surprised if he's sitting there middle of the second round waiting to be picked.
Matt, maybe I'm early on this conversation, but I am curious with the Nico Iamaleava news all around the state and with him probably ending up at UCLA now. How much prep have you done on him maybe as a quarterback next year? And if you have watched some of that film, just how far away is he from being a legit NFL quarterback prospect?
Yeah, I've watched him while watching other players on the team, so I wouldn't say that I've done a deep enough dive to say, like, oh, here's what he's got to get better at. I mean, obviously, he's skinny. Takes a lot of hits in the pocket. That was my initial concern is, like, man, this guy's too small to be taking these shots. And I know that his family has maybe said that was part of the reason for the transfer. But I will be excited. I know he had a lot of hype coming out. So I hope he gets it figured out, and hopefully the Vols find somebody and they can take a roll with it. That happened last year. Was it who was it last year? Somebody had lost their quarterback like week 2 because of NIL, and they went on and had a hell of a run.
Oh, UNLV.
Yeah,
that's right.
I wanted to say Utah, and I knew that was wrong. So, it's like, sometimes it works out best for everybody, and I'm a big Josh Heupel fan. I love watching that offense, so I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Matt, I wanted to ask you real quick, as the NFL is always cycling in quarterbacks, how soon do you need to see what they're made of? Is it, what do you need to see in year one, I guess is what I'm saying, for a guy to know that you have the guy? Because even though Chicago didn't have a great year, they still say, well, look what Caleb did. I think Bryce Young had a shaky one, but he bounced back in year 2. By when do you have to know? Is it the Will Levis 2-year markers where you got to find out?
I think by year 2, yeah, you need to have a lot of belief in the guy. Year 1, I think it's about, hey, from a personality, leadership, work ethic perspective, do we have the guy? How's he prep? Is he a professional? That's what you want to see in year 1. Year 2 is like, all right, let's put this together. We need to see it all on the field now. And so for like Jaden Daniels obviously is ahead of the curve. CJ Stroud was ahead of the curve because of the rookie years they had. Guys like Bryce Young, what a great bounce back he had second half of last season. I think for Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Drake May, Michael Penix, it's like, okay, you basically went through like kindergarten. Now it's time to learn a little bit, and you want to see it out on the field. So for all those guys, and I think we're going to see that with their teams, even trying to build to support them this draft.
So going into year 1 with Cam Ward, record shouldn't matter. We need to be looking at the attributes is what we're looking at, how we judge what the future should look like.
Absolutely. Like, who cares if you go 3-14, but your quarterback plays really well?
Okay.
If you go 3-14, you're going to be able to get one of the top D lines. So it's like, I mean, you want to win and you want that spark. Obviously, because of Jaden Daniels and CJ Stroud, everybody wants that quick turnaround. It's not always real, and it doesn't always mean a whole lot how well you do in year 1. I think it's more about laying the foundation, and learning how to be a professional.
He is Matt Miller. You'll see him on ESPN's draft coverage in Green Bay next weekend at NFL Draft Scout, a must-follow for Titans fans, for NFL draft fans, which if you listen to us, of course you are this morning. Matt, always great stuff. I appreciate it as always. Looking forward to watching next week.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks,
yes, sir.
Matt.
Matt Miller joining us here this morning. If you missed any of that, you can catch it wherever you download podcasts. And a good breakdown on a number of prospects. Interesting, Luther Burden, one of his guys.
He said he's my favorite.
He said it sucks if he's at 35. Be awesome for the Titans.
Right.
I like the way he talked. Matt's super fast like me. He's not super long in this conversation, so you can get a lot of questions in with him.
He does a great job.
Yeah, he
He does.
does.